I stopped and started the recording again so that we have it pure. So now we missed the Dennis stretch officially for the final recording. It's not going to be there. So Dennis, one more time, please.
Dennis is all stretched out. He can't do it anymore.
There we go. Come on. All right. We're live. Flex those muscles. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's October 23rd, 2020. It was weird because I was looking at something this week on a calendar, and I was looking 90 days ahead, and it struck me that 90 days ahead, we're already well into January by then. And I was like, whoa, this year is like over. And I know we all people are saying like, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. And I hate to be like the negative sort of bearer of bad news, but at least in the beginning of 2020, it's probably going to be still more of the same. I'm so sorry to say that. I don't think much is going to change. Well, other than, the elections and whatever happens then, whatever chaos ensues from there.
So like Groundhog's Day.
Yes, exactly. So we're not here to talk about any of that, though. We are here to talk about how to use Airtable for property managers. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been doing a lot of Airtable stuff lately. I recently did a post on firmofthefuture.com, which is Intuit's blog, on how to use Airtable for an accounting firm. And I recently did Airtable for real estate brokers. And now we're doing Airtable for property management. So there's kind of an Airtable theme. There's definitely a real estate theme there because I'm also working on the next masterclass on new.nerdenterprises.com, which is going to be bulletproof bookkeeping with QuickBooks Online for real estate brokers. So lots of Airtable stuff, lots of real estate stuff happening. I love real estate.
The one you did for brokers, is that on your website?
That's in production. It will be on my website. If you want to catch kind of a preview of what's going to be covered in much greater detail on my YouTube channel, if you search for Real Estate Brokers Essentials, that's basically the title of a post where I kind of overview the essentials of what it takes to record the sale for a broker.
Okay.
And then probably what I'll do after I do real estate brokers is do real estate agents, because it's almost like, the best way I can explain it is it's going to be like a carbon copy with a few tweaks, that address the sort of differences that agents deal with versus brokers, right? So that's what I'm going to do. And Greg, thank you for that. I'll have to make that correction. So, while we're on the subject, so Greg just notified me. Greg is awesome, by the way. Greg always lets me know when I screw something up in a good way, not in a bad way. And so I screwed up the time for next week. So I rearranged the schedule. What was originally planned for next week, I pushed off a week because usually the last Friday of October, we do scary bookkeeping stories. And it winds up being a really good discussion that centers around, fraud and fraud prevention and detection, right? So that's what we're going to actually be doing next week on the Zoom is, coming in. So bring your scary bookkeeping stories about the scary things you've seen people do, or better still, the scary things people have asked you to do, whether, wittingly or not. Sometimes the clients will ask us to do things that they don't realize that what they're asking us to do is actually illegal or fraudulent in nature. And so we just have to educate them about, the errors of their ways, but it always winds up being a really interesting discussion. So that's what we'll be doing next week on October 30th, one day before Halloween. So bring your costumes, right? I'm sure, Matthew, we can expect to do something clever and fun around that. And before we dive into today's subject, just, totally random, unrelated side news. I got a new French press this week.
Oh.
And it's not made of glass, so it can't fall and break like the last one did, which is why I needed to get a new French press. Anyway, I love my French press. I love coffee brewed from a French press. There's something so good and pure about it, and the way
What
it
is
tastes.
it made of, Seth, if it's not glass?
It's metal on the inside.
Like stainless steel?
Yep, stainless steel.
Yeah, I have a coffee mug like that, or,
Yeah, well, like the Yeti coolers are basically, I don't know what they make those things with, though, because those things actually do work. You can keep a cup of coffee hot all day in one of those things. I don't know what they do in it, But anyway, let's talk about Airtable for property management. I've got some really cool tricks that I actually want to share with you today based on, things that I've done just playing around with this, because what I'm probably going to do as I do more courses, I haven't decided yet, for example, if I'm going to take like the concept of what I showed a few weeks ago when I did Airtable for real estate brokers and either include it in the quick bulletproof bookkeeping with QuickBooks Online course as a thing, because it's kind of like an add-on you can think of where you'd use Airtable to manage the detailed database portion of things. And then, of course, using QuickBooks Online to manage the accounting. And there's lots of things you can do with Zapier, to move data between them, if, as, and when needed. So that's the other thing that makes Airtable awesome. And they've been innovating and developing like crazy. They got a lot of funding, and they recently got a big round of funding that, from what I read, is specifically earmarked for Airtable to invest in development, but specifically with the focus or aim of making it more competitive with quote unquote the spreadsheet. Right. So we'll see what that results in, but it's really, really interesting to watch what they're doing. They've recently added automations. They've renamed what used to be called blocks to apps, because that's really what they are. You kind of add on these little apps and you can do some really cool things with them, which is another thing I actually want to show you guys, because I learned how to do something really cool yesterday that I've been wanting to learn how to do for a really long time. And I knew it was one of those things that I just needed to take the time to kind of go through the steps and figure it out. Because it's sort of getting into the API of both Airtable and Google Maps. And I was able to link the Google Maps API to an Airtable database. And we're going to see an example of that here when we create a property with an address. I'm going to show you how to link to the Google Maps API so that you can get a map of your property addresses. And it's a Google Maps where you can even get the satellite view. So without further ado, let's take a look. Let's take a look and see what I've got for you. All right, so share my screen. Airtable. We're going to create a new base from scratch. There is a sample lease tracker. You can see I've got it up there. I always look at their samples, their what do you call it? Their templates to get ideas, if nothing else. Okay, so we're going to call this umbrella property management. All right, and I'll click in. And this is what you get when you start with a blank database in Airtable, right? Now, because I've done a bunch of these, I'm going to sort of operate on the assumption that everybody, by the time you're watching this, has seen me do a few Airtable demos by now. So I'm going to kind of skip over the very basic things so that we can stay focused on the sort of more interesting parts of building it for this particular use case, right? So I want to start out and sort of go through the thinking process out loud with you so that you can understand how I think about these things, because I think that'll help you, sort of be better able to think about how to set something like this up, right? So what's the first thing we think of when I think of what I need to track or manage when I'm dealing with, rental properties with property management is I've got, there's a few things, of course, that come to mind. I've got buildings, I've got tenants, I've got units, I've got the owners of the buildings, right? I've got a bunch of things. So the first thing I like to do is take this first table and we'll just call this design notes, right? I like to do something like that here so that I can just reserve this as a place where when I get a fleeting thought or idea, I can use, essentially this notes category just to do exactly that, write notes. I can title it. And if I edit the field type here, I can enable rich text formatting. So I do that because again, especially the first moment I sit down to start a project like this, usually my head is flooded with ideas. So this helps me purge all that, right? So I can just get those ideas down and start outlining, for example, right? All those things I just said. So what do I need? I need tenants. Okay, the tenants are living in units. The units are part of a property. Okay, the properties have owners. Right. What else do we want to track here? Properties is, again, the same thing as buildings. Let's start there. Okay. These are the basics. Okay. And so as I'm outlining this, you're probably realizing what I'm thinking, which is that each of these needs to get its own table here in the database, right? So let's do that. Right now, we're just going to create the shell. I just want to create my tabs. So we'll call this one tenants. Okay. The tenants live in units. The units live in buildings or properties. Okay. And then the buildings and properties have owners, which if we're a property management company, essentially these are our clients, right? So we're going to kind of work backwards here, and we're going to start with the tenants, okay? And we're going to build out the tenant database. And the reason I like to do it this way specifically is as we're building this out, it's going to give rise very specifically and definitively to what is needed elsewhere. And for that matter, where in this universe things need to go, right? So the first thing we're going to have here is a tenant's actual name, right? So let's say Greg is going to live in one of these buildings, okay? So we're going to start, of course, with the person's name, right? Then we'll need a phone number. So insert left. Okay, the field type is phone. Okay, and 310-123-4567. Okay, you don't need to type any special characters because we formatted as a phone number field, so it's going to do that for you. Okay, who else should we have in here? How about Elaine? Let's see, do I have this right? Cossette, right? All the double consonants, right? And you're in Ontario. Give me an Ontario, or you're in Canada. Give me a Canada area code I can use. And don't forget to unmute.
403.
All right, 403-555-1212, right?
There you go.
Okay, and then we're gonna have Katrina, right? Katrina's here. Okay. Katrina, what's your area code down there? You're in like Orange County-ish where you are.
909.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. And then let's get one more. We'll put Matthew Fulton in here. And his is a 1-900. No, I'm just kidding. Remember those 1-900 numbers?
We go by 888 now.
888.
888 fun time.
Wow. You're almost in 805-ish, aren't you? You are in 805.
I am an 805er.
All right, cool. All right, so we'll start with 4 tenants, okay? And so what next do we need? Maybe we need an email address, right? So I'm not going to make you watch me
Do they
enter
have
data.
pets?
We're just going to set up the fields. You get the idea, right? We need email. I have notes here, right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll just rename this and call it tenant notes, right? All right, next, then we need to know what property you're in, right? And I like having attachments. First of all, I might want to attach the lease agreement here that they've signed with me, right? This is the perfect place to do that. Status is nice. The default, this comes in as a default, as you might have noticed. So here we just want to change the options. We could be like, current, moving in like during the first month or whatever, and then moved out, something like that, right? We can even add things like, what's the word I'm looking for? Later in default, whatever. You can add to the list based on whatever you'd want to track. Just keep in mind, you want to think ahead about not giving yourself too many individual little things to track, because then the database gets hard to maintain, right? So you want to keep it fairly simple and balance that with giving yourself enough of the information you need. All right, so then we need a unit number. Okay, so after the property, oh, I didn't do the property yet. We got to do the property. What's going on here? What is going on here? All right, so now we're going to add in the property. Okay, and notice what it does. It's smart. Is I can do link to property owners, right? But if I back up to where I didn't put the Y in yet, I can do link to properties buildings. So that's what I want, right? Okay, and then whenever I link, it immediately assumes I might want to add a field that's going to look up information based on whichever property I've chosen from the list, right? So I'm going to skip this for now, but just so you understand, that's what this is doing when it says, do you want to add lookup fields, right? I'll skip that for now, okay? And what I want to do is I want to split this up into two different properties, just so you can see what it looks like when you have two or more properties in a database like this that you're building. Okay, so we're going to make up one new property. It shows these unnamed records as I tried to link it because every time I create a new table, it's got 3 blanks, right? So we can actually delete those. Okay, and now if I go back to tenants, of course, I could just go into properties and start building this database out, which is probably a smart idea. But I also want you to understand that once I've got a linked field like this, I can actually add a new record to that database or to that table right from within this one, right? Which is really nice. It's kind of like how in QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks, I can easily add a new account and an account drop down and so on and so forth. So same sort of concept here. It makes it really easy to work with and create the infrastructure that you need on the fly. So let's go directly into this to create the 2 new properties. All right. Matthew, where do you want to live? Give me an address. Give me your office address.
111 East Mars Avenue.
Mars. Okay. And what we'll do is I'll rename this field because this should be the property address, of course. Okay. And that's perfect as the first column for this field because you want it to be unique, right? So let's add in address field. So we'll do single line text for city. And then I can duplicate this field with a right click, state, duplicate, zip, right? So I can start filling this out, obviously. Over here, where it says hide fields, this actually does more than just allow you to hide or show hidden fields. If I click it, it gives me a straight up and down list of all the columns I've just created. And it's also very easy to reorder them from within this dialog. So I want to put the status down here and the tenants should go at the end. This tenants is it's the mirror image of the linked field that I created when I linked the tenants database or table to property. So once you link a field from one table to another, it creates that corresponding linked field in the other table. It has to have sort of both sides to it, right? So that's the properties, right? And you can, of course, whatever information you would want to track about a particular property, you just add the columns all day long, right? What do I feel like that didn't quite take? Let's put notes and attachments at the bottom. Just before that one. Perfect. Right, so these notes would be about the building itself, right? So this is not where I'd put the lease agreement because the lease is tied to the tenant specifically, right? So just to keep sort of the context of things in mind, okay? So now I need a second property. Who wants to give me a property address we can use?
I'll give you one.
All right, let's do it.
777 North Venus Drive.
That's perfect. I love the space theme. We're all like space cadets here.
Katrina, is that where women are from?
And men are from Mars. Okay. I'm gonna avoid the sophomoric logical next comment about that other planet whose name resembles, never mind. You probably all know already where I'm going. I'll just avoid it because these kinds of things tend to get me into trouble because I'm a child.
I have another suggestion for you, Seth, as a
What's that?
property.
Okay, let's do it. If somebody else says it, it's okay. I just can't. All right, so we've got 2 properties as an example, which means now I can go back to my tenants list. And by the way, I show this every time. If you move your mouse over any of these records, right, each row is a record, each column is a field. If I click this little double arrow that appears next to Greg, it gives me this horizontal kind of dialogue, version of the record, so I can fill it out more easily, right? So further down here, now I can click here to link Greg to a property. So let's say, since men are from Mars, right, we're going to put Greg and Matthew there. by the way, now that I've linked this, and notice if I had the information there, it would show me city, state, and zip. So let's actually click in here and let's add that in. We're going to say this is
Marvin.
in
City is Marvin.
Marvin. Okay. Marvin, outer space.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I don't know, the zip would be like 00000. All right. So now what I've done is I've drilled over while I'm working in the tenants. I've drilled over to the properties database. It shows me that I'm working in that, with this little link thing. And then I didn't set up this status to be sort of specific to the property. So anyway, now I can get out of it. And now you can see the information shows up here very nicely. And while I'm in this dialog, notice the little arrows here. So I can click this little down pointing arrow to go to the next one. So here's Elaine. So Elaine is going to be in the Venus property. Okay, and then I'll go down one record. And Katrina, of course, will be on Venus as well. Okay, and then what happened to Matthew? Oh, you were last. All right, so Matthew's going to be on Mars. Perfect. So now I've got my tenants set up, right? We've got the properties that they're associated with. Again, I can reorder these things. Maybe I want to see that first. I want to see exactly what property each tenant is in. And now what I can start doing, just to give you an idea of where this is all heading, is this is the first initial view is called the grid view. It's just a generic, sort of flat file kind of view, right? So let's call this master tenant list, okay? And then I'm going to click this ellipsis here. That's what this is called. It's an ellipsis. And we're going to duplicate the view. Okay, so that's going to carve out a carbon copy of this view. And let's call this by property. And then all we're going to do here is click group, pick a field to group by, and we're going to choose properties or buildings. And boom. Now it organizes it for me in terms of properties, right? So as I always say, these different views, think of them as like running reports, right? It just gives you different ways of capturing and organizing. And so I don't have to keep reorganizing it. I can save it in effect by carving out different views. And there's lots of things even in the automations that you can do with respect to views. Like you can create a view that's based on a filter and then create an automation that's based on a new record showing up in a particular view. Right. So there's lots that you can do when you start learning how to kind of take advantage of the infrastructure of this. Another thing we might do is you can, first of all, you can create a calendar. I don't know how useful that would be here. There's the gallery view, which could be useful if we started associating, say, images with these properties, like if we had photos of the property, which might be very useful in this case. Matthew left. Greg, you made him sad and he left. I lost my train of thought now because Matthew left and made me sad. If we had pictures associated with the properties, for each record, we could set, for each record of a property, we could actually, the properties and buildings one would be more apropos for this. We could use the gallery view and the photos would show up here. Right. So it just gives us kind of a different and a nice view of, the property and the information about that property. Right. So I'll leave this as the gallery. And then you just click on the different views. And if you start getting a long list of views, you have a search box here. So you can quickly start typing, some of the letters in the name of that view. So you can, pull things up quickly. Right. So let's go back to our master tenant list. Okay. And what else do we need? So we have the property, okay? Now we need the units, right? So the units, we're going to start with, let me see something. I'm just kind of checking my notes here. Okay, so the name would be the actual unit, right? So let's say, these two properties, let's say the Mars Avenue one has like units 1 and 2, and we'll assume the North Venus Drive has like A and B or something like that, right? Just to look at two kind of different use cases for this. Unit number 1. Okay, and now what we need is a new linked field. So insert left. Okay, and we need properties. So link to properties, right? Okay, and skip. And over here, I'm going to assign it to Mars Avenue. Okay, then unit number 2, same thing. This one I'm just going to copy and paste because you can do that. Just Control C, Control V. Okay, and by the way, when you create a linked field like this, let me go into the customization area. You can choose whether or not to allow linking to multiple records. In this case, I want that off because I wouldn't want a unit to be able to be linked to more than one property, right? Each one obviously stands on its own. So now let's do apartment 1A or something like that, okay? And that's going to be from Venus. I can start typing Venus. It brings up the, sort of lookup list, okay? And this is going to be apartment 1B, right? And again, I can copy and paste, or I can just choose like this.
Can I be a butthead and ask if you have unit number 1 at Mars and you have unit number 1 at Venus, could you just link both? How would that work? Would you do
I would there would be 2 unit number 1s here in this column, right? Because they're kind of completely separate. I mean, and what you could do to avoid the confusion of having, 2 exact or 2 sort of duplicate names here in this first column, here's what you might do. Let me insert left, okay? And we'll just make this also single line text. We'll call this, I'll call it unit singular just to distinguish from that for a minute. And I'll copy and paste these over because we'll use these as the permanent units. And then we'll call this, unit dash property. Okay, and then what we'll do, instead of single text, and I don't know if you can hear my puppies going crazy in the background. You can?
Yep.
Perfect. This is what I have all day entertainment. I don't need Netflix or any of that anymore. All right, let's customize the field type, and this time we want a formula. Okay, and the formula is going to be a concatenate, just like we do in Excel. Okay, and in here, I'm going to choose the different fields that I want to combine, which is going to be unit and property, right? So I will, let's start with property. If I start typing PRO, there it is, properties buildings. So I click on that, comma, quote, space dash space, quote. That's very literally going to put a space, a dash, and a space next, another comma, and then I want unit. Save. So that way, remember that if I'm linking to this from one of the other tables, this is what it's going to be looking at. So this will make it a lot easier to see what I'm doing and see what I'm selecting. So Greg, you're not being a butthead at all. Actually, it was a really, really good point, right? Because again, if I go in here and I want to say, okay, Matthew, or yeah, wait, did Matthew really leave? I guess he did have to go. He didn't, usually he would post in the chat. I thought he was joking. I thought he was going to come back. Anyway, so now, Greg, if I want to put you in unit 1, I'm going to add a new linked field here. All right, so I'll insert left, link to units. Okay, I'll skip the lookup fields, and now I'll put you in. See how nice that is? Now I can clearly see. And if I start typing unit, because I know you're in unit 1, of course, it'll give me all the ones that have a unit number 1, but that should be easy enough to work out from there, right? So I'll put you in unit 1. I'll put Matthew in unit 2. Okay, and then Elaine, we will put on in apartment 1A, and Katrina will be in 1B. Okay, so now what we can do is see how we have by property. Okay, I'm going to go to hide fields. The new fields that get added into the table when you go to a new view, they get kind of stuck at the end. So we can move that up. But now let's make a copy of this, duplicate view, by property and unit. Okay, so now we take this group by and we pick another field to group by within the first one, and that's going to be unit. Okay, now that may be overkill. You may not like that, but I just want you to see that you can do it, right? It might be fine to just be able to see that within each property. Here's Greg, here's Matthew, and here are their unit numbers, right? So this is probably a little cleaner to look at, but again, I just wanted to illustrate that you can do this, that you can, and you can go even, more levels deep if you want to, right? So if I decide I don't like this or don't need it, I can click on the ellipsis while I'm in that view and choose delete view, right? Because this is probably going to be sufficient. Okay, so what else can we add to this? There's something else really cool that I want to show you. The owners is going to be pretty straightforward, right? So I can put in, a lot of our usual suspects aren't even here today. Just looking at the Facebook chat. So Tina's asking, I didn't understand all the things you can concatenate. Is there any way to search concatenation examples? You can concatenate any two pieces of text or more. You can keep adding to that. So concatenate comes from a Latin word, which means to combine things. So, and concatenate works in Excel as well. That's where I originally learned it. But so you can concatenate and just point to a string of different things, each separated by a comma, and it will bring them together, which is why I wanted to put the dash in quotes with a space around it, because otherwise it would be all crunched together and hard to read, right? So if I go back to, what we did here with that, notice under the units, it's nice and easy to read. I see the property, and then I see the dash, and then the unit number, right? So examples would be infinite. I mean, in terms of just any two or more things you'd want to combine, you can combine using the concatenate formula. Good question.
Seth?
Can we, oh, sorry.
Yep.
Seth, I have a question. On the name field, would you ever want to have like first name, last name as two separate fields?
You could. I used to do that pretty religiously, and then I just found that I ended up wanting to combine them back together into one full name, right? So one thing I did in another example of this that comes in handy, tenant, let's just call this tenants, right? Is, sometimes when people move into a place, there's one like primary person signing the lease, but then you have additional tenants. So you can do that a couple of ways. You can create a whole separate table for additional tenants. This way you can list each of them and then associate them here. Or you can just create like a text field, right? So if I insert right here and just do the long text, let's say, right? And I'll enable rich text and create a field. And then I can put additional tenants as the name. And this way I can just go in here and you can click this little expander and I can just list the other tenants who live here and maybe put their phone numbers, right? If I have that information, right? So you can, it just depends on how detailed you want to be about how you're tracking it, right? Like I said, I did one, I'm looking at my other screen because I have kind of examples of these that I've done before. And I think I did do one where, yeah, here I had, I'll show you an example of a different one that I did. So this is one I call OPP management. And so here's an example of where I did it as a separate table. And then you just associate the property and the unit number, right? And then, and then it links to the primary tenant, right? So we know who the primary tenant is. So that's the other way you can do it. I just didn't want to take up too much time today, diving into that rabbit hole, so to speak. So that's how we can handle the additional tenants piece.
One other question,
Mhm.
Steph. Can you property buildings? We can delete that column and still have units with the address and no. Go back to the other one.
So you can't delete this because it's linked, but you could hide it if you just don't want it to show.
Right. Okay. Just hide it. Okay.
Yeah. So you just hide it, and now it's there, but it doesn't show up, and you can create
So
a different view. Go ahead.
Can you go back to property buildings? No, leave it hidden. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but no, it still wouldn't show the 1B in A.
Well, out here you've got the linked fields from the other side of it. So here under units, right? I do have the other side of that here.
Oh, there. Okay, it's just squished up. Okay,
Yeah, it's just a little squished up. If I move this over, it might be, and then scroll to the
there you
right,
go. Okay.
it might be easier to see.
Mm.
And so here I can kind of see, and I can click the expander here so I can see everybody who's in this building, right? Or these are the units actually. On the tenants one, I can click the expander and see who the people are, right? And so you can kind of see how nice that looks.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Now, if you were to delete one of these records in property buildings or delete the whole table, on that units page where we concatenated the
It would
field,
crash. You'd get an error because this is looking to a linked field.
you hit it.
Oh, yeah. It would be looking to this linked field. If I deleted that unit, well, this would go away, and then all you would see here is just the unit piece of it. It might give you an error because it's looking for this in this formula, and it won't find it. So it probably would crash it if you went ahead and deleted that. Is that what you're asking, or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I want to show you something really cool that's going to take a few minutes to show you. So I'm just kind of looking at the time. And let me just look at my example here. Okay, so let's go back to the tenants database because I think you get the idea of how this gets built out. And obviously you can get your own ideas and increase the list, ad infinitum in terms of things you can do. The property owners, obviously you would have a link field to properties and buildings. You would put the name of the owner here and then link to the building that they own. And then if you have several property owners who own several buildings, that can be grouped and so on. And in this table, you would track probably all their detailed contact information, right? You can, in another example, I had another table for vendors for repairs, for like when we need a handyman or a plumber or an electrician to come and do some work. So you would have a table for that. And then you can even go as far as a table for work orders, right? So when the tenant calls you as the management company and says, hey, my faucet's leaking, I need a plumber. You can create the work orders right here in Airtable. You can even build out a system where you would, email that work order to the appropriate vendor because you can make the associated links. And so this can be taken. I mean, again, I can and eventually will do a whole course on this to show you all the incredible things you can do, because that's what you're doing here is you're building a database. This week in 97 and up, we were looking at Airtable in a little different use case, as far as using it for accounting firms for a project management tool. And somebody asked, would this replace ClickUp or not? And I said, well, it's different. It probably would ultimately if you were going to choose to use Airtable for project management stuff. But I want to make sure people understand that, ClickUp is pretty strictly a project management tool that's very customizable, whereas Airtable is a database builder that doesn't require knowing any code, that can be used to build a project management type of tool, but it can also be used to build a lot of other really cool things like this. You're building databases. So it's more generic, I guess, is the best way I can explain it. But this is something really cool that I want to show you that I figured out. So in the tenants database, we need a few more fields here, right? And so the first thing we want to do is after the unit, let's go out to the unit. Okay. And I'm going to hide a bunch of fields. Actually, one of my favorite things to do is choose hide all and then just go back and show only the things I want. I don't care about that. I do want that. And that's about all I want for right now. Perfect. So, and this just lets me work a little bit more easily here. So what I want after the unit is I want the move-in date. So we have a date-based field called move-in date. Okay. I want monthly rent. Okay, that is, oops, I did it in the wrong place. Field type is going to be currency, monthly rent. Okay, then I want security deposit. That's also going to be currency. Okay, then I want move-in month, and you'll see where I'm going with this. That's just going to be a straight, actually, that's going to be a lookup field. For now, I'll just do it as a single line text. Move-in month. Okay, and then I need another column. We'll do a single text for now. It's going to be last day of month. Just bear with me on this because it's really cool once I do this. Again, single-eyed test, and this is what this is ultimately all leading towards. Is I want to be able to figure out the prorated rent. For the month that they move in, there's going to be a partial month's rent. So I'm laying out the infrastructure for how we're going to ultimately get to this amount. Because in most cases, what you'll do is that when the tenant moves in that first month, they pay full rent and security deposit, and in month number 2, they only pay the prorated rent based on whatever their move-in date was in the previous month. So I'm gonna build something here that will do the math for us very quickly. As soon as we put in the move-in date, it'll figure out the rest. So then while we're here, I want another date-based field for the move-out date, right? Because then if I want to just see active tenants, all I have to do is create a view that's filtered for anybody where the move-out date is blank. Come on, guys, I want to fix that. All right, so we have move out date, and I think that's all I need for now. Okay, then I need one other little table here. We're going to call this months. Okay, and I'm going to save time by copying and pasting from the example I'm using on my other screen. Okay, so what I did was I created a column just to name each of the months, and then a column that shows me how many days are in that month, right? And I just did this so I can do kind of a lookup, right? So now if I go back over to my tenants table, so the move-in date, we'll say Greg moved in, we'll say he moved in last September 8th, or last month on September 8th. We'll say Elaine moved in like July 15th, right? We'll say Katrina moved in around the same time. We'll say Katrina moved in right on July 1st, because that's a good way to test if the formula is working that we're going to create ultimately. And we'll say Matthew, just moved in this month on, let's just call it like the 27th. That's fine. Okay, so now we need the monthly rent. So let's just say, Greg, how much monthly rent do you want to pay?
$15.
$1,500. Perfect.
No, just $15.
No, $1,500. Right. I heard you.
I was going to say 1,000.
You're going to say 1,000?
Yeah.
You clearly don't live in California.
Yeah. All right, Elaine, how much rent do you want to pay?
1,000.
All right, you're 1,000. Katrina, how about you?
I'm going for a $29.50.
I feel like we're on The Price is Right, and Matthew's gone. Should we just
$1?
$1? There we go. No, let's put him in. Since Matthew left, let's make him the most expensive rent. And by the way, while we're at it, and while we're thinking of the rents and things that tend to drive the amount of rent, we could probably put in a column here for the square footage of each unit. That should be in the units table, and then it can be looked up over here if we wanted to. Right now, the security deposit we're going to assume is going to be just 1 full month's rent. Okay, now the move-in month we're going to do as a lookup field. So now that I'm here and now that I built the months table out, I would love to write a formula that looks it up based on the move-in date. And I probably could do it, but I just found this is easier and very quick to do, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to change the field type here to a lookup. Okay, and it's going to be... no, sorry, what am I doing? Not lookup. I want a linked field. Link to another record from months. No multiple records. Save. And now this time I do want a lookup, although that field's already been created, so I'm going to skip this for now. Right? So over here, we just want to see this is September, July, October, right? So this is going to be September, July, October. Okay, and this is going to become a lookup field now. So customize field type, lookup. Now the field that we're using to look up something from this table is going to be the move-in month, and then it's going to give me a window into that table to tell it what I want. It's actually I never renamed it, So it's just called number notes, and I'll click save. And so now it looks up the number of days. And now we can calculate the prorated rent based on the, what's it called? Based on the monthly rent, right? So, but first we need days of prorated rent, right? I want that to be calculated in here. So let's call this days of prorated rent. Okay, and then we'll have the prorated rent in dollars. Okay, so just want to see something here, make sure I've got this right. Okay, so days of prorated rent. Now we're going to change the field type to be a formula. Okay, and the formula is going to be, we need the last day of the month. Okay, minus, and this is a formula we're going to use called day, parentheses, of the move-in date, right? And then we need to add 1 to that. And then click save. It didn't like something I did. I may need the equal sign in front. Maybe that's what I forgot. Why doesn't it like that? Oh, I know why. I forgot to close parentheses on the move-in date there. Save. Okay, it's really not liking me. Let's try this again. So when this happens, I'll just start building it incrementally. Let's first see if I can get the last day of the month in there. Okay, perfect. So that works out. Customize field type minus, okay, day. Let's try it in all caps. It may be particular about that. Open parentheses, and then we want move-in date. So we want the day portion of the move-in date. Close parentheses on that, +1. Save. Perfect. It works. So now it's calculating. So days of prorated rent is 30 based on what? The move-in date is September 8th. So days of prorated rent is 23, right? Because remember, we add 1 back to that. Because basically what we're saying is otherwise it would be like, it would be excluding a day based on just doing the subtraction alone, right? So you can see it works. And keep in mind, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's very close. Okay, and now that we have that data, we need the dollars of prorated rent. So I'm going to insert left. This is also going to be a formula. Okay. And so the prorated rent formula is going to look as follows. Okay. We're going to take monthly rent divided by last day of the month. Okay. Times the days of prorated rent. Okay, so that basically we're saying, basically what we're doing is we're breaking down the monthly rent into daily rent, right? By dividing it by the last day of the month, which is essentially the total number of days in that month. And then we're multiplying that daily rent back out by the days of prorated rent. So when I click that, and we'll call this prorated rent in dollars. Okay, and once I've done the formula, then I can actually do the formatting. It needs to know from the formula's result first, so now I can set this to be currency. I can set the precision and the currency symbol and click save. And so now it shows me. So now going forward, anytime I enter a new tenant, as soon as I enter in that tenant's move-in date and I assign the move-in month based on that, it will instantly calculate my prorated rent. Right. So this becomes a really cool tool that then when I have QuickBooks Online open and I want to start creating the invoices for, to invoice the tenants for their rent, I can just pull this up so I don't have to sit there figuring it out. Right. It's figured out for me. Let's check Facebook. Any questions, comments? All right, anybody here in Zoom? Any questions? Okay, well, we're almost out of time, so I suppose that's good. So now let's just add in one new tenant, right? Let's say I'm moving in. And let's do it from this perspective because it's just fun to do. So I'm on Mars for sure. Okay. And let's say my move-in date is going to be next Monday. Okay. And my monthly rent's going to be, Greg, how much rent should I have to pay?
$3,950.
2,960.
Three.
Oh, three. Oh my God. I have a penthouse. Security deposit also going to be 39.
Or you have a 1-bedroom apartment in
Well, yeah, in Los Angeles for sure. The other thing, by the way, if you hadn't already thought about this, is I could add another field that basically sums the monthly rent and security deposit to show here's what they need to write a check for in month number 1, right? That would be very easy to do. It's just a formula-based field that's going to be adding these two. All right. So the move-in month is going to be October. I am going to figure out how to automate this part based on the move-in date. But like I said, at this point, it was just easier to do it manually. So now it's showing that I have 31 days in the month with 6 days of prorated rent based on a move-in date of next Monday, where did that go? Am I losing my mind? Where'd my move-in? There it is. So based on the 26th, okay, 6 days rent. There's the prorated rent, and it's done. Okay. I don't have a unit yet, so let's go in here and let's add a new record to the units. Okay, so I'm going to be in unit 3.
I don't have to do it.
Okay, and we have to link to a building. All right, and status I didn't do for this one. All right, so that's perfect. And now if I go over here by property, boom. So I'm instantly there, right? And so hopefully what you've seen over the hour or so is how this begins to take shape as you build it out. And I literally brought up a blank database and built it from scratch for you. So questions, comments, concerns, feedback?
It was good. Very clean.
Cool. Yeah, I love Airtable. I absolutely love it. You know, I kind of ran short on time here, but if I really wanted to take this to the next level, I might create an automation that basically says once I've assigned a move out date, you know, I can, I wouldn't even need an automation for that. Cause like I said earlier, I could create a filter and a separate view that says only show me, you know, records that don't have a move-in date. So that's how I would create a view that's only active tenants, right? And then as new tenants move in, I just create a new record for that tenant. And basically then you're going to duplicate that unit for that tenant, right? Or you could use the same unit because you have one record with that tenant in that unit. That's probably better because you don't necessarily want to duplicate unit number 1 every time a new tenant moves in. So what I would do is just, you know, as one moves out and another moves in, I would create a new tenant record, but it would be linked to the same unit. Like if who's in unit 1, if Greg moved out and then somebody else moved in his place, I would create a new tenant but linked to this same unit. And in that respect, what I would want to do is make sure that this linked tenants field does allow multiple records, which it does. And then it's kind of cool because then I have kind of a history of every tenant that ever lived here, right? And I can click over to Greg's profile, which, you know, again, over here would have all of his contact information. It hides the fields initially that I didn't sort of include. But so I have a complete history of every tenant that ever lived in this unit and their last known contact information, at least, right? So that's kind of what that would look like in terms of, you know, as people move out, you know, what we would do. So, so there you have it. I will get this posted up on my website probably at some point tomorrow. If you have any questions or afterthoughts, just let me know, and I would be happy to answer them. Tina says super duper. Alexa says nice, and she says I love Airtable too. You could also figure out the daily rate times the number of days. I did that, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. You did.
Maybe she posted that before I showed that. No, she just posted that a minute ago. Unless she's saying there's a better way to automate. Anyway, I don't know. Alexa, if you can follow up on that comment and explain what you meant by that. Larry says, I expect you build on this in the future demos, evolving, the emails to vendors. Yeah. I think at that point, when we get to that level where we're really automating that stuff, that's going to be reserved for a paid course, I think. I've given you a very, very thorough starting point for sure, for fun and for free. But I'll definitely build a lot of that automation kind of stuff, into the course. I love the idea of having the maintenance records here, and being able to create work orders and get those work orders sent out to the appropriate contractors to get them to come in and do the work, and, just really automate that whole management piece. So that's what I'm kind of excited to build out a little further, but I'm definitely going to reserve that for a course, because that's something I have to work hard at, even trying to figure out how that's going to come together. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. As always, I hope you all had fun, learned something, and I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. And I look forward to seeing you soon in another webcast. Alexa's saying you have a list of the daily rates of each unit. So I just wrote out a formula that figures that out for us. But I think I see what you mean. You would maybe, I don't know. I have to think about that. I'm not sure I follow. Alexa, hit me up in Slack. Let's talk. Let's figure out what you mean. Because it sounds like you're onto something. I'm just not sure I understand exactly what. So let's talk. Anyway, I'll see you all around. Have a great weekend. I have to go play with my puppies.